Here's a short version of my story. I can always go into more detail. Let's see. I was raised in a Christian family, born in Detroit, moved around quite a bit as a child. What that meant for me, my family, was that I got to see a lot of different churches and different flavors of Christianity, different denominations. Um, and that put interest in me when I saw the various flavors of Christianity, to know what does the Bible really say. Um, when I was 13, I started having an interest in Israel, in parallel to increasing um, questions about what does the Bible actually say. I would see like, oh, I had a few different Bibles. Why do they all say different things? What is the original meaning of the words in Hebrew for the part of the Bible that people say doesn't matter? Why is it still attached to the Bible? Which is why you had those Gideon folks that just cut off the what Christians call the Old Testament and just hand around the New Testament. I that passion for Israel and the Bible led me to become a missionary even in high school on a local level, I guess. But I also supported missionary organizations in Israel when I started working in high school, sending money and all that, donating money for Jews to make Aliyah. I donated a lot of money, actually, even as a teenager, to that, through my 20s and all that. As I was coming to the point where I am now, which started really for me like 15 years ago, of really starting to look into the Torah, the 5 books of the Bible, the first 5 of the Christian Bible. Anyways, in a high school, I was I taught a Bible study at a large church for high school students, and then at my high school, which was fairly large, where we lived, a couple thousand students, I started the first Bible study club there, and that involved like having to threaten to sue the school when the gay and lesbian group shut me down because apparently I was preaching hate speech over 20 years ago. And yeah, I mean, now that's more, I guess, more in the news and all that, but that was what I was dealing with then. My activity also included driving around with boxes of gospel tracts, handing them on the street, knocking on people's doors. I pretty much memorized a good portion of the New Testament. I would just sit and read and pray for hours and all of that. At the heart of my desire to know what was in the Bible, which led me to find like one of those strong concordances and all that. And I got one Bible that actually had some of the meanings that they, from a Christian perspective, put in the words in the Bible, and then the Greek and the New Testament and all that. So yeah, I mean, I studied quite a bit. And but the thing for me was like I really wanted to know God as best as possible, and I had questions about what the Christian Messiah was saying in context of what is written in the entire Bible. And one of the questions I remember I had since a child was like, well, who created him? Who created God? Because it says that God was created, firstborn and creation and all this stuff. Well, who's that? Yeah, I want to know who that is, right? So that led to continued searching and all that and studying. Fast forward to when I was 30 years old, and I got married for a second time. And I remember I just had this desire to look deeper into things around what Jewish people believed. I had actually moved to Ohio. We moved around the West Coast primarily after we left Detroit. But then I moved back to Ohio and I went to a what do you call it, type of church, messianic type church. This guy is like big on TV now, and he went and prayed for Trump and all this stuff when he was president. This is a guy who claims that you know the Christian Messiah appeared to him in the 70s and told him to follow him and leave Judaism, and his parents put him into institution, all this stuff. That's his story. Anyway, so I went to his place when he was still small, before he now is on, big time TV guy. Discovering the Jewish, person. That's what his um, TV show is called. It's a short Jewish man in his mid 60s. Anyways, so after I married my wife, I, had a history of continuing to study and be following Israel and things around Judaism, and not necessarily all political stuff, but even then I was following what, Iran and all these other countries would say about Israel, because I was like, clearly these people are off, but I'm curious what their perspective is. I'm like a person who likes to dig deep into things. So one of the things that we dug deep into when I was dating my wife and we got married, I was like, what is these holidays that Jewish people are celebrating? That's in Leviticus chapter 23. This is true to me. Like, why are we not do that? When did it ever say that these things are been replaced by holidays that, upon extensive research, you can find there's lots of pagan origins and rituals and things in a lot of the Christian holidays. And so, why abandon these things that are in the Bible for these new things, which even the Christian Messiah wasn't going around painting Easter eggs and dancing around trees. In fact, as we digged into things, we saw, there's practices were written about by the prophets that Israel was doing, and God hated these things and chastised Israel for them. So God changed his mind about doing some of these practices for Israel. Now it's okay for his new people. So it was, kind of confusing. So fast forward a little bit, we continued to dig into that. We ended up looking at as a kid, we always said the 10 Commandments growing up. And it's funny because we have Bible study, and we say the 10 Commandments, and I never thought of, like, what is this one? Remember the Sabbath day about? It's there. Why are we saying that? You go and research, which I did, and it's still there today. It says on the Vatican's website, we changed the Sabbath day from Saturday to Sunday. Okay, well, the first half of the Bible says that this is forever. These things that God gave the people of Israel and anyone that wanted to convert and become a part of the nation of Israel. These things were permanent. They weren't changing when the Messiah that the Jewish Bible speaks about came. He wasn't coming to create something new. He was coming on a different mission than what the Christian Messiah did in that book. And you excuse me, I'm not trying to be offensive by calling that book or calling Christian Messiah. At another point, maybe I'll explain why I don't use his name. Anyways, that led us to looking at the Sabbath and trying to do what, I remember I was like, okay, let's say it says in Leviticus 23 for, Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. This is what you should do. Take the day off. And, and when I looked at it, I was like, what do Jewish people do? They bake bread and they, read and they pray and all that. So I did that. I remember I took off the day from work, and my wife and I did that. Funny enough, it was we went down to the beach in Canada because I moved up to Canada after when I married my wife. She's Canadian, and I remember we did this, and it's funny where we ended up starting our path to conversion. The rabbi's house was right up around the corner that we would be at 4 years later when we went to him. Anyways, after we doing that, we started I started trying. Oh, let's try and do whatever it says don't work on the Sabbath day. What is the Sabbath day? Because the Vatican will still admit on their website they changed it, so it's Saturday. So we didn't work. Obviously, we didn't know everything that from a Jewish perspective what the Sabbath is. We were doing our best, and then that led us to be because asking questions, at least from my perspective, and going to so many types of churches, it's okay to ask some questions. Just don't mention anything about the Torah, or you get shown the door. And that's what happened to us. We were ostracized. This was a church my wife had went to for 10 years. They started, stay away from them, talking about the law. Although, you read the book of Revelation, it says that blessed are those that keep the commandments. Even there is important. What is that? Because there's contradictions about that throughout. Anyways, so we started going to little home groups, and eventually we started teaching Bible study. I continued to do my research. It first started around like all the pagan origins of the holidays that Christians celebrate compared to the biblical holidays, and then the Sabbath and all that. And then like the dietary laws, which I know, they try and say Paul says this and that. Anyways, um, Paul is another subject for another day. Because to think about it, if you can't change the New Testament, which is the thread at the end of the book of Revelation, how come you can change the Torah, which is the foundation, and the New Testament can't stand without it? But it's a threat to not change the book of Revelation, but it's okay to change the Torah, which God said was never going to change. God said he wasn't a man several times in the Torah. In the book of Isaiah, God says, I am the only God. There's no one coming after me. There's no creation. He wasn't created. There's nothing coming after him. One of the things I remember when we started teaching Bible study, and we started teaching Bible study to people from, young to in their 70s, including pastors would come and I would teach the Bible studies, looking at these things. And I remember one day we were teaching in Ezekiel, chapter, I believe it's 18, and it says, no man shall die for another man's sins. And God said that he didn't want anyone to perish. He said if the wicked man turns from his wickedness and does righteousness, does his commandments, he will forgive him. But if the righteous man decides to be wicked, he's going to get his punishment. No man dies for another person's sins. I'm like, well, what is that? One of the things that I used a lot was Bible Hub, which is a great tool because it shows you all the cross verses and all that stuff of where you can see similar verses, both in what the Christians call the Old Testament and the New Testament. So you can type in one verse like I did around the chapter in Ezekiel and see, oh, in Jeremiah chapter 31, which is a chapter around the New Covenant, you see that it says the same thing. No one dies for another sins. But I'm like, why did they just cut the part out about no one dying for another sins and talk about in the Christian Bible, take out the little passage about the new covenant and leave out the rest, which is a common practice in Christianity in relation to the Torah and the Tanakh, the entire Jewish Bible, is to just pick and choose verses out and to, make things up around it, which if you did that in the New Testament, people would call you a heretic, but it's okay to do it with the foundation of the Torah. So I remember reading that verse about no one dying for another person's sins out loud in the Bible study at our house, and everyone was like, you could hear a pin drop. Oh, that's strange. Anyways, fast forward to lots of research and picking through everything that the Christian Messiah, Paul, the apostles, everything said, cross-referencing everything that they claimed, because again, I had most of the stuff memorized, seeing where it's sourced in the Torah. And again, this is not from like, oh, I'm so wonderful. I'm not the first person to memorize things in the New Testament. I know that people have more memorized than me, but still, that was just my passion. It wasn't like I'm boasting myself or something like that. I just wanted to know the truth. And you see so many. I think there's 40,000 different denominations in Christianity. So which one was the right one, right? So anyways, fast forward through lots of searching, I even started doing like events. I created a pro-Israel magazine. I got to interview people in the government in Israel, rabbis, Christians that were supportive of Israel, and we tried to focus around the anti-BDS movement, which wasn't necessarily so popular in 2014, like people speaking out against BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, which is trying to harm the state of Israel and Jewish folks. And so God opened up a lot of doors for me to meet lots of interesting people, and that led me to use my marketing background to start hosting interreligious Jewish conferences, um, looking for areas of commonality and difference between the people that said they were following the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it was interesting, some of the perspective. The first conference I did looked at the history of what Christianity had done to the Jewish people. And there were people at my first conference in Jerusalem that said to me afterwards, I've been to Israel over 20 times. These were people in their 80s. We had people from around the world that came. And they were like, we didn't know the Christians were so vicious and killed the Jewish people so much. Which was, an interesting question, because you look at some of the things that the Christian Messiah says in the New Testament, and they're kind of opposite of the Torah. A lot of things, actually. Some of the things are not. Some of the things are actually, from Judaism, like the Golden Rule predates. People would like to credit the Christian Messiah for that. No, someone said that. Jewish rabbi said that before him, and that's documented. So, like, okay, what's original here? Anyways, I did 3 conferences, continue to search, meet different people. I remember the last conference I did, God kept putting people in my way. And from government and religious perspective, I don't know. I think I'm not an important person. Why I get to go, and I had the office of the Prime Minister of Israel replied to me. It was talking to me about the conferences. I'm nothing. I know that God was opening these doors for me. We have government speakers at these conferences, and people were, genuine, honest. I remember this one rabbi. He said, "You guys killed us with physical swords for over 1,000 years, almost 2,000 years." And he said, "Nah, you want to kill us with spiritual swords." And I was like, "What? What is that?" All this stuff, all these different things, issues. I even wrote 2 books. I broke down every single thing, claiming that the Christian Messiah was doing and against what the Jewish Bible says the Messiah will do, and Jewish teachings say the Messiah will do, and he didn't do any of it. In fact, he was the opposite, right? They were changing. I started to see that even the Christian Old Testament is different than that Jewish Bible. So they changed things, like, they say in the New Testament, sacrifice and offering, didn't desire you, create a body for me and all this. And it doesn't say a body in the Hebrew. Even in the Christian Bible, it says ears you created for me. Oznaim. So what is that? Why does it say body when actually the real meaning of the word doesn't say that? Anyways, I made lots of PowerPoint. I made so much stuff. I've got a lot of documentation things. Again, we can go really deep on this, but I'm just giving you a little summary of a lot of time. So after that last conference, we went back, and I said, you know what, we want to follow the God of Israel, because he, it's actually clear in the research. You look at the book of Deuteronomy, you say, the end of the book of Deuteronomy, there's stuff that hasn't happened yet. So how does this new book replace this, if even the first 5 books aren't even finished? And, if you read in context around Isaiah 53, you see the servant is not what Christianity says. Read the 10 chapters surrounding it, and you'll see who the servant is. And you say, wait, why does God have 2 firstborn sons? Because Christianity says that the only begotten son is, their Messiah. But in the Jewish Bible, it says that Israel is God's firstborn son first. So God has 2 firstborn sons. Anyways, there's lots of different things. So that led us to go back to home in Canada. And we we don't care if we burn in hell, because that's the threat. You know, it's just threats. You ask questions first. The threats will kick you out the church. Then you say, "Oh, let's look at what the Jewish rabbis say about the Jewish Bible." Then they kick you out of the home groups. When you say that, why do you got to kick us out for asking questions? You should be free to ask questions. If you can't ask questions, that's usually what happens in cults. Anyways, during our searching, we decided converting to Judaism was our journey, which was a very, trying time. Getting to become Jewish, that's kind of the story. Again, I could talk probably for a few hours getting out things. I mean, I've debated with PhD pastors that don't have responses to basic things in the Jewish Bible. Not even looking at the Jewish Torah, just the Jewish Bible, what Christians call Old Testament. Even using the Christian Old Testament, there's so many holes in in the book of Hebrews, it says that God replaced and cast out Israel. Well, the portion what they take from that is from the prophets, and it doesn't even say that. So I'm like, they're just making stuff up. Like Paul just started making things up that are not true with the actual foundation of the Bible. Anyways, I'm not trying to convince you to do anything. That's Christian Judaism doesn't proselytize, so you take or leave the information. If you want to know more, happy to go on to more detail. I hope you have a good day.